Hi, I'm Naomi May, freelance fashion editor, and we are here today with the SATCoL podcast, The Sustainable Conversation, and we are delighted to be joined by Lucy Kebbell, writer and founder of The Whip, and international DJ and philanthropist Cuppy. Hi Cuppy and Lucy, welcome to The Sustainable Conversation. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Cuppy, I am really interested to know, how do you go about encouraging your followers to be more sustainable?
I think that's such a great question, Naomi, because during this time, it's a conversation that has definitely come to surface. I think it's fantastic. People are considering sustainability and what it's all about. And one of the things I felt was important to understand what sustainability actually means. And I think it's something that's quite relative. To me, it means conservation, preservation, but most importantly, actually innovation. And as a creative, that's the most exciting part. Because what I've learned, and from my time trying to be more conscious of being sustainable, I've realized it's not about taking myself outside, my own world and changing it. It's about making my world as it is more sustainable. And that's really key. I mean, what do you think, Lucy?
Yeah, I really agree. I think it's kind of always best to look to yourself and where you are. And I think when you're asking people to, change their thinking, change their behaviours and their lifestyle, you really have to meet them where they are. Because it's not going to happen otherwise, right? You're asking a lot of people in a time when, there's so much going on for people anyway, right? So yeah, I totally agree about innovation as well. I'm super interested in innovation and how it's going to, kind of push this conversation forwards.
Yeah, and I think also, even just being innovative requires you to be educated in what you're trying to change. Yeah. So one of the first things I think that is important is learning about the impact that sustainability has on the world. And I always ask myself, why, as much as it's become a bigger conversation and amazing opportunities like this to talk about it arise, I wonder why it has become more of a conversation. And I know for a fact, growing up, it wasn't so much, and being on social media and the presence it's had, it's something that people are eager to learn about. And whether anyone's experiencing it or not, or whether it's something they feel more inclined to learn about, the information is out there, right? You can learn.
Yeah. Do you think that maybe it's something to do with the democratization of information and media, and I guess like content creation as well? Because
that's exactly what I was going to say. Do you feel like when you share information, so when you write articles, Lucy, when you share information to your followers, do you feel like you get feedback from people who have engaged with whatever you've created, who are asking you questions or wanting to know more?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I obviously sort of speaking more from a written point of view, and then I also work with small businesses in like education. But yeah, I mean, there's always, I think it's in the delivery as well. It has to come from a place of like, isn't this exciting? Can't we do some cool stuff with this? And really kind of get people thinking about it and like imagining like what could their input be, and be encouraging almost. I think it's almost like being like a reception teacher or something, and like really kind of getting people hyped up about it. Yeah.
I think that's such a good point, because delivery, like you said, is so important. And, I know you've written some amazing articles. I guess on my side, it's about, face value, sort of facing directly to my fan base, who mostly for me absorb music. Actually, I've just had a brilliant idea. Maybe I must make a song about sustainability.
Yeah.
How creative.
Yeah.
Thank
MIA
you.
did.
Listen.
Do it.
Are you going to drop a verse?
No.
I will. Okay. I'm here and ready to drop a verse. Okay. Whatever you need.
But in a world that there is so much information, almost dare I say too much information, you know, it's
And
important.
a lot of fake information as well.
Yes, right. And it's one of those things where it's important, delivery is important, and people have quite, you know, short attention spans often. So it's the packaging of how we deliver it, and also it's the way in which it becomes cool. You know, I in the music industry often, you know, struggle with staying up to date with trends and staying up to date with what's really current. And, you know, fashion is a huge part of that. And it's something that I found, turns out I think the secret is really always being yourself. And I think sustainability now has a big part of that, because it's not just, you know, how you look, it's how what you wear is made, and how it's not just your story, it's the story of the clothes you're wearing. I think that is fantastic.
Yeah.
And also I think it's about not preaching to people. It's like you said, it's actually just inviting people into the conversation and helping them to know that we're all a part of the solution, all a part of the conversation, rather than it being, well, we know so much more than you, because we don't. We're all learning and we're all on that journey, aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely. And that it's easy and that it doesn't cost loads as well. Because I think that's a lot of the time where you lose people, is where they've been, you know, they've sort of been told that sustainability is something that you have to buy into. It's like this aspirational lifestyle that like you can only afford if you can afford one of those beautiful little bikes, and you know you've got your reusable coffee cup.
You have to do it all or nothing, right?
Yeah, and you're a traitor to the cause if you're not spending that money right. So I think that having conversations about, for example, you know, secondhand clothing and wearing what you already have are really important, because then you're, again, meeting people where they are, what they can do right now.
And Lucy, I know that you are something of a charity shop aficionado.
Who told you that?
Tell me about that.
Well, it really kind of it was like my childhood was spent, you know, being dragged around charity shops and car boot sales, and being taught to sharpen my elbows at jumble sales and things like that. And I remember, you know, I get some pretty good stuff for like hardly any money, but it was a real kind of taboo when I was younger, because, you know, buying secondhand sort of inferred that you couldn't afford like new clothes, you know, that you were poor or whatever. And it was kind of stigmatized back then. And I remember I'm quite an honest person, and telling people, oh, you like my trousers? Oh, my mum found them in a charity shop. Yeah. And that did not go down well. Oh. Well, yeah, they were like, oh God, what's wrong with you? Can't you afford like new clothes? And I was thinking, oh no, I didn't realise people didn't do this. And then sort of like fast forward to working in fashion, I just didn't do it anymore, because no one did it. Everyone was shopping on the high street, or, you know, sample sales and things like that. And yeah, it's only sort of been, I guess, kind of since I left my last kind of media job, I really started to embrace it again. Having a kid helped as well, because then you're just sort of like pushing a pram around. You're like, where shall I go? Oh, let's go into another charity shop. Yeah, and I think just the offerings are better now as well. Yeah.
I think that's so interesting, because you're right. There is a certain, I think, idea, especially for, you know, young people, this idea of following a crowd.
Yeah.
And that's why one of the things I said, that, you know, you are your own fashionista. And when you have that mentality of, you know, being uniqueness being your superpower, that really helps you kind of lead the way. But, you know, I particularly in my philanthropy, I'm from Nigeria, and one of the things I'm passionate about is, you know, young girls, and it's really, the work I do is really about them finding their own voice. And it's so hard to push a conversation and encourage people to get into things that they just feel like they don't have a community around, or unfortunately just isn't cool. But having said that, you talked about secondhand clothing. There's been a huge wave, which you know about, of, you know, sort of trends coming back, Y2K. It is so cool. I mean, do you remember when, like, sort of going to charity shops just became like a thing. It was so cool. There was a sudden shift.
There was I feel like there was an almost overnight shift from it being, like you said, it inferred something quite negative to it being this really cool, like, oh my God, I can't get what you're getting, but that looks amazing and that's one of a kind. And it was, I don't know what that was attributed to, but
yeah, it's interesting because I've always noticed when trends and eras kind of come back around again, right? And it was always odd to me that if, you know, like say the 60s was back in trend, we weren't going out and trying to find original 60s stuff.
No,
I mean,
so that, yeah,
okay,
that's true.
let's be honest, there wasn't a lot of size variation going on at the time, right? But, you know, we weren't trying to find the original cool stuff.
That's very true.
We were buying it new.
Yeah, and a lot of, I think, the, you know, atelier and fashion houses were actually redesigning.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's the reimagining and the inspired. But,
yeah, you're right.
I'm loving, well, actually, I'm not sure if I love it, but I am quite enjoying seeing, I'm quite enjoying seeing like young girls walking up the street and they're wearing an outfit that I'm like, oh, wow, I was loving life wearing that outfit when I was like 13 years old. I'm like, I wonder if they're wearing my outfit from when I was 13 years old that I donated, right? So that's so cool to see people enjoying my era, but like enjoying it authentically like that.
And isn't it the 30-year cycle? They say that after 30 years.
So we're betraying our age here, right?
Yeah, they say after 30 years, the era is considered no longer slightly tragic but cool again. So that's why now the 90s and the noughts are kind of coming back around because the 30-year cycle's coming in. So
you've had enough distance from it.
Exactly. So sadly, we look back and think, oh my God, that was our...
Well, I think you said something really interesting about donating clothes. And one of the things that I think is, you know, you sort of look back at the day you got that dress you adore and, you know, the time to sort of let go of it. I wonder whether you get the same feeling I get when I donate clothes where you're like, you know, it's almost like passing the baton. And I'm like, this dress did me so well. And you will do the same, you know?
Yeah.
It's this idea of the next life, the circle of life. And I'm like, you know, I mean, it's like, I think about such amazing moments and also sometimes not so great moments in life where you're like, actually, I hope this dress does you better than it did for me.
That's so nice. I get that as well with swapping. I really enjoy
swapping. Yeah. Tell me more. I'm new to that.
Oh, okay. So you can do it in person or you can do it online. So there are like apps that will facilitate your swapping. And I can give you some tips later.
Did you know about that?
I went to a really good one the other month and got the most amazing pair of jeans. Like, sensational.
Yeah.
I'd never seen them before. I've never heard of the brand.
Oh, wow.
Absolutely amazing.
So isn't that so cool? And I remember taking my stuff along to this swap and it was stuff that I loved but just like didn't suit my lifestyle or didn't fit me anymore. But I hadn't really been able to sell it secondhand or anything. And I was like, I don't know what to do with this stuff. So I took it along to this swap. And I remember like seeing other people giving in their clothes to the swap. And I was like, oh, I'm going to come back and I'm going to get that later. And then when we were all trying clothes, because it's like a kind of a big grab.
Yeah, what is a swap? So
yeah, so you take your stuff along and they will kind of grade your pieces. It kind of depends
on where you go,
right? But on how they do it. But then generally you will go away and everyone will kind of come back at the same time. It's like a first come, first serve, like, yeah. But it was so fun seeing other people like trying on a shirt that I donated or not donated, but was swapping. And I said to her, she was like, oh my God, what do you think? I said, I love it. It was mine. And I think you look so good in it. I really want you to take it. And she was like, yeah, actually, I think I will take it. So it was really nice to like have that interaction.
I mean, that for me, the idea of a swap, there's a huge, you know, it just shows that sustainability also goes hand in hand with sort of social creation because,
absolutely,
you know, it's such a full circle. Like there's a huge, like, you know, that's like a sisterhood moment.
Yeah. And you can get it on renting apps as well. You know, there are apps out there that are peer-to-peer, and they encourage that, you know, message the person that's renting your dress.
Well, there's a community.
Yeah,
which
and I
is
wrote
how,
an
like
article
you said,
about a
that's how
girl
you-
once who, like, she wore my dress to a wedding, and then I wore it to a wedding the next weekend, and she really sweetly sent me a picture, and I was like, look at us.
Oh. I actually know of people who met on renting apps,
I've
and
heard
they're now
of
really
this.
good friends.
Wow.
Yeah, and they're now really good friends because they rented each other's things. Because I guess style's it's something you bond over.
It is.
Yeah.
So actually, if you're renting someone's whatever it might be, of course that's going to be a bonding thing for you. I actually know that, well, you're our charity shop aficionado. I know that you, Cuppy, have recently been dabbling in upcycling. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I like I said, I really hold on to certain moments, and my clothes and outfits as a DJ really tell a big story for me, and I'm able to hold on to these sentimental moments through my clothes. You know, like you said, whether it's the wedding, but upcycling was such a new concept to me, and I wanted to reinvent, you know, my clothes and my fabrics, because the same way in my job I'm able to reinvent music through DJing. It's the idea of bringing, you know, sustainability into my world. So I have something to show you.
Please show us. We have to see. What is it?
Absolutely. So,
Oh, wow.
they're my shorts, and they are actually formerly from different outfits I've worn over the years to perform. And this is a great example of how I brought sustainability into my world. And I already, just looking at this, it gives me so many memories of, you know, DJing for festivals and, you know, DJing for different type of events. And it's so nice to be able to have that as a story. And this is something I'd love to give to my kids. And, you know, so you can go into, I think, sustainability as innovative as you want to, but also it almost reinvents itself where there's a story, and I cannot wait to make more of these. And it's a lot easier than I think people think. And actually, these are just sort of patches of fabric, so I was able to donate some of those clothes. So yeah, so these were just tiny pieces. You can make a handkerchief, you know, you can make anything, a little headband, and it's really fun.
I'm really interested, Lucy, in the role that the media has to play in not only educating people, but really framing people's minds about this. Because like we said, it's not about preaching, it's about engaging people in the conversation. What do you think on that as a journalist?
Yeah, I would say that it's really crucial. I mean, when we look at where media is in our lives, I mean, especially now that everyone has a phone in their pocket, and, you know, we're all on social media, and we're influenced by various people, it's everywhere. It's kind of very insidious when you actually realize it. So I think it's so crucial that the language that is being used, and you know, that people aren't being necessarily sold to. I mean, because that was something that made me feel a little bit uncomfortable in a few of my roles that I held previously, when I was becoming kind of more aware about sustainability, and I know we're going to talk about that, but I kind of started to feel like, oh wow, I'm just selling people stuff that they don't need, and I do it month after month after month, and what do they do with all of that stuff? And it really kind of started to click into place for me that this is hugely powerful. And of course, you know, media companies, a lot of the ways in which they're funded is through brand advertising. And so for me, there's a really important relationship there between brands and their messaging and how they're directly marketing to consumers, and then also the media, journalism and influencers, and how they're speaking to consumers as well. And in my mind, in order to kind of create this consciousness shift in people, it kind of needs to be like a tandem effort between both of them. Like, they both need to be saying, okay, buy a little bit less.
Yes.
And, you know, maybe get something cleaned or repair it, or do you want to swap it? Or, you know, we've got a rental partner or a recycling partner, you know, and encourage those kinds of questions, and especially to, taken away, I think, from this idea that you have to buy into it as well. I have a real problem with that. I just think that it's misled a lot of people.
I agree. And I think authenticity is so important, and that's why, again, I emphasize it's about bringing sustainability into your world and, not sort of suddenly trying to go, up to the supply chain and sort of like, it's doing what you can in your own world. And like you said, you don't have to have the matching sort of bicycle and the coffee cup. It's being more conscious. And you said something so important, which I struggled with, especially in music. It's sort of buying less. And I've grown up and grown my career being told, Cuppy, you can't wear that again. You cannot. You've been photographed in it. You've performed in it. And I think that is something that's an issue, and it's something that pressurizes a lot of people. And I think
that's starting to change a little bit.
I think so too. But it does take, and for me, it's seeing certain role models I have, and dare we say, certain stars repeating their clothing, and clothing is to be repeated. I mean, you know what I mean? It's really important too. And there's an afterlife, and there's an after that, and I think that's something that you're so right, Lucy. Influencers can really influence people to understand. And obviously, we've had the introduction of of sort of fast fashion, and I really think that, especially quite often when you buy quality items, sometimes it's because you want them to be able to sort of survive cycles. And I'm sure, actually, I was going to say I'm sure no one knows, but maybe some people, I don't have to buy a winter coat for the foreseeable future because I've got a great coat and it's worked for me for over 10 years. And, it's having that idea of not having to buy so much. And that's something that I think all stakeholders have to work on. It's all the way through. So it's the consumers, but also it's, like you said, it's the media, it's the producers of these items, and that's a big conversation to be had. And dare I say, it's beyond, it's beyond clothing as well. It's the whole world. It's the idea of consumerism.
Well, I'm interested particularly in how, and I know this relates to a lot of the work that you do, Cuppy, and how sustainability isn't just about the environment. It can also create social change too. Can you talk to me a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. So my as far as philanthropy, what I really focus on is, women and quality education. And I remember when sustainability sort of came up, I thought, that's got nothing to do with me formally. And then realizing actually some of the ways in which climate action and work conditions and actually material supply affect people back home in Nigeria, where I'm from, it's really part of the cycle. And so we have to think about, so it wasn't until I went back home and I realized sort of like the working conditions and how people are getting materials and not necessarily being well compensated for it, and how people are being pressurized to hit deadlines from certain producers, and how we have expectation to order something and get it in 1 hour, how that actually affects so many countries, especially developing countries. And I learned so much about my country, and we produce things like silk, we've got bamboo, and how actually sustainable fashion really supports those communities. So then I had a eureka moment where I was like, actually, me trying to help young girls have a brighter future does have almost everything to do with sustainability, and affects how people consume things and how I behave in my everyday consumer behaviors. I was like, wow, there's such a link. So you're not as far away from it as you think.
I think that's a really, really important message that people need to kind of take on board. I think that we're always told that it's to do with the planet. It's to do with the trees, the soil, the carbon emissions, the net zero, which it's all really, really important. But the social element is so, so important too. And in my mind, at least, not enough kind of attention is paid to that side of it.
On the very human impact.
Yeah.
Of
You
the
have to
fashion
you have to kind of look at the way that. Yeah, take for instance specifically the fashion industry. You know, the amount of women that are employed in the garment industry. So like 80% of garment workers are women, and you know, if those women are not earning enough money, they're not able to educate their children, that has a huge then knock-on social impact to people's education, their ability to get a job, to get healthcare, and also sort of in the wider scheme of things, thinking about how those people are engaging with environmentalism in their country, because you can't really expect people to care about something if they can't afford to feed their own children or pay for medical supplies.
I mean, Lucy, you've literally hit the nail on the head where, you know, it's like, it's sort of like me being passionate about, you know, equal gender pay, and then going back and you know, I'm not doing my part and kind of trying to be consciously more sustainable in how I shop, and then going back and meeting, you know, young girls who are much younger than me, not having enough money to eat because, you know, they're in these sort of really low factory manufacturing conditions. So, and then me going like, oh, you can't even have a conversation with them about equal work pay because that they have, you know, it kind of goes down to the primary human conditions. You know, it's like giving you know, giving a sick child a book to read when they need primary solutions. So
it's the hierarchy.
It's the
Exactly,
it's the hierarchy of needs.
What's one simple thing? We've spoken a lot about there being a lot of noise around this and there being a lot of information, and for people who just don't have the time to maybe do all of the research into all of this, what's one simple, sustainable thing that people could implement into their daily routines that could help?
Oh God, just one thing. I mean, I think it's just don't do anything. Just don't buy as much stuff. You know, just the next time you think, oh, I want to treat myself, or I want to cheer myself up, or oh, I've got a night out, stop yourself and think, do I actually need to buy something else? Because it's likely that the answer's no. You've probably got something you can wear, or you know, maybe you can use a renting app, or you can borrow a dress from a friend, or I don't know. But I think it's just having that almost that pause button before you click buy. Because I think just the simple act of buying less is really, really going to put us in much better stead for then, you know, all of these incredible innovations like polyester recycling, you know, social innovation, etc. Those things are not going to have any kind of impact unless we stop buying so much new stuff, really. It's a bit boring.
No, I think that's a great one.
I think we have to be realistic. So I completely agree. My suggestion is basically the same as Lucy's words, you know, use your clothes more. So, you know, buying less, but using more. So for example, in my case, that's fine, Cuppy, you've worn an outfit twice to an event, wear it again, you know, and that's okay. And I think that's really important. I need to just kind of, repeating is okay. And actually quite often, you know, we know clothes can find a new different life in themselves. But certainly, I wanted to say use more, but that sounds a bit odd. But I think in this context, it works.
I think that's right. I can't remember, I feel like it was maybe Trini or Susanna who said that if you wear an outfit that you look great in, on multiple occasions, people don't really notice that you're wearing the same outfit. They just notice that you look great. And I think we just need to, just like not worry about it.
Buy less.
Like Hello Magazine's not following you around, chastising you because you wore a dress twice.
No,
it really doesn't matter.
Not. I think the problem is we immortalise things on social media, so then people have this complex that like... But people have already seen me in that dress.
It's paralysing, isn't it? It's like, what do people think of me?
But really, one of the most liberating pieces of advice I've ever received is people are never thinking about you as much as you are about you. So you've got to let it go.
You know what? That is so humbling.
We need more of that.
That is so humbling. I think that's really good advice. And it's like, it's really realistic. you know, and I think
It doesn't cost you any money.
no, and you can start now. You know, it does not take time to just, dare I say, sometimes I think with the conversations around sustainability, you just feel so far away from it. It's like, I'm gonna do this next year, next month. But from this moment, you watch the podcast.
You're not buying anything new? No?
Not buying anything new.
It's hard. It's hard. I'm going to be really honest with you. Like, I tried to do the, there's like a only buy 5 new things in a year.
Okay. How did we get on?
Well, I just kind of buy secondhand.
Okay, so when you say new, you mean?
I mean new.
Never
but
worn,
then
okay.
someone else was doing a 30-day challenge, don't buy anything. And I did really, really well until I bought a cute summer dress in a charity shop.
Yeah, but
it's hard though.
But I think I'll wear it.
You will.
And also, can I just say that's a great realistic. So, you know, don't be too extreme on yourself. Don't.
Yes.
You know. So, for example, if you must buy new, buy something from a charity shop. You know, sort of start those good practices.
Yeah.
I think it goes back to what you said. It's not all or nothing.
It's not all or
not about
nothing because
perfectionism,
you
right?
might likely, you know, sort of fail.
You'll fail.
And you don't have, you'll fail. And, you know, you can start with different things. I mean, and you can start with clothes and, you know, you'll get people saying, yeah, I'm never buying a new toothpaste again. It's like, you know, there's so many ways in which you can integrate it, but what fits you, start.
Yeah.
I love the idea of a little challenge. Get a little community together, a little
get
tribe.
your friends together and see if you can stick to it.
I want to give it a go. 30 days, nothing new.
Maybe if I'd had like people doing it with me, I might have been a bit.
You probably need a bit of an accountability partner, don't
I think
you? Like,
so,
do I need
I'm
this
about
dress?
to walk into a charity shop. Should I?
Help me, stop me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And of course, secondhand shopping isn't actually even just about finding a new dress or a new something you love, is it?
Yeah. I mean, obviously you can speak to this a little bit more, but there's the social element, right? You know, you're generating some money for charity, which is so important.
Yeah, that's true. And I think it's about also adding your kind of, you know, your value to the whole chain.
Yeah.
Your own personal value.
Yeah, absolutely.
Lucy, Cuppy, thank you so much for joining us on the sustainable conversation today. It's been such a joy to talk to both of you.
Thank you.